First to welcome my co-host, Paul Hollis, author of the Hollow Man series, owner of Hollow Man Publishing and American VA. Paul, how are you? And are you excited about our guest?
I am today. We have a really special guest, Marcus Aurelius Anderson. He is a leadership and executive catalyst. He's a TED Talk uh, speaker and international speaker as well, and an author. So, welcome, Marcus.
Thank you so much for having me on,
Hey,
gentlemen.
hey,
I appreciate
Marcus.
you.
So how did it all start? Tell the background to get to become what you are today. What is your background in?
Uh, my background is in martial arts, and I was in the military. An injury in the military is what was actually my catalyst to put me in the position that I'm in now, to start helping people embrace adversity as opportunity instead of seeing it as a burden.
So basically, you're a martial artist, but you're in the military. Thank you for your service. What happened that got you out of the military and then to your next career?
For me, the whole thing was I joined the military at 38. I was at a place in my life where I was at a crossroads and I needed something to force me to level up. While preparing to deploy with the light infantry, I suffered a severe spinal injury, a ruptured a disc in my neck, and it paralyzed me from the neck down for 4 months. And I was told I'd never walk or use my hands again. So at 40 years old, I wake up broke, divorced, bedridden, and paralyzed, trying to figure out what the hell do I do with my life now?
Wow. So when that happened, how did you get, what was the guidance or what self-directed or mentorship to say, I'm going to get out of bed, being self-paralyzed, losing your whole life, pretty much starting again?
Yeah, having everything taken from you. I'd like to tell you that I was courageous and stoic and it was easy and I just endeavored. But the truth was, I found out how fragile I was. I went through denial, anger, bargaining, acceptance finally from depression. I was suicidal, but I couldn't even act on it. And once you're in that place where all of a sudden now you've done everything you can, you've prayed, you've bargained, you've tried to rationalize, and now you're at this place where it's like, nothing's going to change. I can't ignore this. So from this place, I had to actually understand. I found what was true gratitude, which was I was grateful for that I wasn't injured outside of the wire. I wasn't deployed, because if that had happened, I would have had my team compromised.
Right.
And from that place, I became grateful that I may never be able to walk again, but at least nobody else was hurt. And after 2 weeks of having that genuine 360 bulletproof gratitude, I started getting a little feeling back in my hands. And that was my 1.5 to 2 year journey of occupational physical therapy to become the man that you see before you.
Wow. And so you said you had to go through all those things. And then you suddenly said, wow, I got to change. And you made those changes. And today, and now you're helping others that have gone through these huge adversities, coaching them, or what are you doing?
So the book, and the TEDx talk, The Gift of Adversity, that was the impetus. And I really didn't know what to do. I just wanted to put this out there. And then I had so many leaders that were coming out saying, listen, I see adversity as well. I'm dealing with it. I'm afraid to embrace it. I run from it. And the truth is, with adversity, the longer that we try to escape it, the greater the adversity once we face it, the greater the weight of that adversity. So they started seeing I have to lean into these things. If I'm having trouble with this business model or with this clientele or with this team member, and I don't get in front of it and acknowledge it, then there's no way for me to actually begin to change what's going on. And that, from the speaking from that, coaching companies, and then releasing books, my own podcast, Octa Nonverba, that's where it all came from. But it's that same message, that same idea of all leadership begins with self-leadership. And if I'm not leading myself well and I don't do adversity well, how can my team? How can my wife? How can my family?
Got it. And how do you do that? And I think that we don't look at adversity as a seed of benefit. There's a seed and benefit, as Napoleon Hill always says, about adversity. But ultimately, we don't want to look at adversity. And even in Christianity, they teach this, and we don't understand this, but you ultimately, all types of religions teach us when we suffer. I think we don't want to continue to want to suffer, but we have to be feeling the same way, our vibration, as if we're not suffering, so that we don't allow and dwell on pain, injury, real pain, physical pain, mental pain. Ignoring it isn't the right thing, but to understand it, to discuss it, to think about it, and then let go and move on is the thing, and not let every other opportunity we have ignore it because we're still focusing on ourselves and what pain we're going through. And woe is me. And let's have conversations with people about it. Let's feel misery together, and misery loves company, and you never grow.
Misery loves company, but not as much as mediocrity. And that's what it does. It brings us to that victim mindset. And that victim mentality is actually the most selfish thing we can do, because it's all about me. Listen to me, listen to my hardship, but don't make me take any kind of ownership. The reality is, until we accept adversity for what it is, and like you said, in the heat of adversity, it's almost impossible to find the gift. But once we're through it and we look back in it in hindsight, we say, wow, that wasn't as bad as I thought. And how many other areas of my life am I doing the same thing?
And I'm trying to teach myself teach myself to be so, especially with owning multiple businesses, multiple ventures. Every day there could be ups and downs of 25 results. Out of 25, you might have a couple that you could dwell on. Instead, you say, okay, that's great. You're dealing with a terrible client. You're dealing with a situation, but you had so many wins, and that gratitude to keep in the process. Because if we allow things to bother us and fester in us, what happens?
It doesn't get any better. It just builds that resentment, and it gets worse. And like you were saying also, people, it's easy to be grateful when things are going well. When everybody's healthy, when you're making all this money and you've got the big house and the Lambo, it's great. But I ask everyone listening to us now, if you can hear my voice, look at the adversity you're facing and try to find an area to be grateful from that. Because if you can learn to be grateful even in the face of adversity, now everything else is easy and you're bulletproof. And it's not easy at the time, but if you make the choice now, you have to have this mentality well affixed before you get punched in the face. Because if you wait until then to start having the conversation, it's too late.
How do you study? So through that guidance, do you read certain books? Do you have certain mentors that you go back to?
I actually went back to me. I went back to martial arts. I went back to my 11-year-old self that was trying to read Marcus Aurelius at a young age. It went over my head, but it was my endeavor towards understanding philosophy, and then back into martial arts. I'm an instructor under Bruce Lee's protege, Guru Dana No Santo. So with martial arts, all these things are built into it.
Yeah, totally.
So, and that humility, it's impossible to continue to grow until you have that humility. And that's what this is about.
And then that's what people don't get is we're going to go, if someone's really an adversary, if we keep attacking that person and hitting that person, yeah, we're going to still maybe potentially be successful, but our success is a lot less if we do that. Then, hey, we're going to just not love that person. We're not going to go after that person. And it's because of all the other successes that can come from it. And that's hard because in a society we're taught, let's smash that competition. Let's forget about that competition. But we're not looking at that person and really what they're thinking, because it's all about mindset. Some people just have this amazing mind, right? They could go and smash someone in the face and still be happy with what they're doing. But that's not many people. And it takes a lot of training to understand and be able to deal with everything and not let things bother you. I'm sure if you study Michael Jordan, right? And see Michael Jordan, how he is. He was an intense guy, right? But ultimately, at the end of the day, he knew he was the best. And if you know you're the best and you believe you're the best, you will become the best if you put the work in to become the best. But if he didn't let things fester if he had a bad teammate. He didn't let things fester if he was going through a divorce or certain things like that. He kept going. And is that how they teach in martial arts in a lot of ways?
Well, you were talking about the adversary. The physical manifestation of adversity is an adversary, an opponent. And that person is probably the best teacher you'll ever have, simply because they don't pull any punches. They wear their intentions on their sleeve. It's impossible to misconstrue their intent. But at the same time, if you can rise to that occasion, if they show you a chink in the armor that you can learn, now we're talking about business, right? If I can turn this into $1,000 mistake instead of a $100,000 mistake that's scaled out at the $1 million level, that's where the actual adversity's gift comes to us.
Because you look at things and you say to yourself, no, this doesn't work. It was interesting. One of my colleagues always dwelled on don't go back to what you were doing before. Well, I've gone back to what I'm doing before, but I've also expanded it in so many other ways. And then I'll go one direction like crazy and I'll tell myself, stop. No, I'm not going further. and I might go back to things that worked. But see, the problem is a lot of coaches don't teach that's why I think we're going to be better in AI. Certain people will always be better than AI because AI is not going to do that. They're not going to stop saying I made the wrong decision and go back to something else. Maybe go back to a client that they worked with before, but now they're ready to work with them. It's a different mentality, right? And I think you know this from the suffering. I know this from the suffering I dealt with in a divorce and separation, and also losing a lot of clients through another divorce as with a business partner, that I learned defeat, adversity. But if I come back the next day ready to rock it, I'm fine.
That's it. And pain and discomfort are the best teachers. Very few times do we learn a lot from that victory. It's within those defeats, within those smaller setbacks that give us the opportunity to see it. But like you say, actum non verba is Latin for actions, not words. People talk about taking action, but making that decision for most people, and that decision may be, like you said, I was wrong. I have to stop. How do I correct this? The gift for adversity for most people is to not repeat the same mistakes that put them in the same position over and over again.
But the problem is something they do that, right?
Yeah.
But
There's
when
only
they,
two,
they
there's two ways. There's two ways to deal with adversity correctly. And again, if they're repeating it over and over again, that's on them.
But so this is the problem. Sometimes we overdwell and say, this is how we're going to be able to make it through, is I can't go back to something else and admit I'm wrong. That's not true. That's not making the same mistake over and over again. You're figuring out what's worked, what didn't work, stop quickly and say, oh my gosh, something that was working really well for me, I need to go back to that. That takes heart, because you're going back and saying, I was doing this before and I said it, and I decided I'm not going to do it again. Then I go back and say, it's much better now.
That's it. We have to pivot. We have to see it for what it is, not for what we hope it to be.
And what you do is help people through that by looking at their adversity and saying there's a seed and benefit and move forward. Where's the best place people can find information on that and all that and learn about?
They can go to LinkedIn, find me there. They can find me on Instagram, or they can go to marcusaureliusanderson.com, find out about my speaking, about my coaching, about my workshops, everything that I do. And you can buy The Gift of Adversity on Amazon, and the TEDx talk is out there on YouTube for free.
All right, fantastic. And what do you think is the last note for people that deal with adversity, especially you went through the biggest adversity? When something's going wrong, what do you do?
Understand that adversity is relative. It's not new to you or anyone else, and give yourself a little bit of empathy in the process to get there. The only time that you will not be able to get through adversity is if you give up. But once you're on the other side of it, it gives you a gift like nothing else possibly could.
All right. Thanks again for stopping by. Great conversation. Love to have you back on to talk more about this. But it really is, you finally can cure yourself and heal yourself once you know that problems don't mean you have problems all the time. You have to not allow it bother you and move forward to the next thing. And if you don't, you're screwed. Really are. Because people that constantly reflect on their problems will always have problems. The people who move forward through their problems will not have as many problems. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're listening and watching The Neil Haley Show. We'll be back in just a moment.